There's a truth we all come to learn: not everyone we meet will treat us kindly. Sometimes it's not because of who we are, but because of what they carry within themselves. And yet, the way we respond to hurtful people often defines our strength more than anything else. So, how do we stay strong in the presence of those who try to bring us down? Let's explore 3 ways not to fight back, but to rise above. When someone speaks with cruelty, it's easy to mirror that energy. But pause for a moment, ask yourself, what pain might they be hiding? You see, people don't wake up wanting to hurt others. They act from fear, insecurity, or unresolved wounds. Understanding doesn't excuse their behavior, but it frees you from carrying it. It turns reaction into reflection, and in that reflection, you find clarity, not chaos. There's a difference between protection and isolation. Boundaries say, I respect myself enough to decide what I allow into my life. Walls, on the other hand, say, I don't trust anyone anymore. Strength is knowing how to say no without closing your heart. It's learning that peace isn't found by escaping people, it's built by managing proximity and energy. You can love someone from afar and still wish them well. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. When others insult, criticize, or belittle you, they're testing your foundation. If your confidence depends on their approval, you'll always be at their mercy. But when your identity is rooted in your values, kindness, honesty, courage, you become unshakable. Storms may come, but trees with deep roots don't fall easily. Your strength is not in your reaction, but in your consistency. Keep showing up with integrity, even when others don't. Staying strong around hurtful people isn't about winning or losing. It's about choosing who you want to be, even when the world gives you reasons to be someone else. So the next time someone tries to tear you down, remember, you don't have to match their energy, you can raise your own. Because true strength isn't loud, it's steady, it's quiet, it's yours. When we face hurtful people, our first instinct is almost always reaction. The sting of their words, the coldness in their tone, or the disrespect in their actions triggers a wave of emotion inside us. It's natural, the human brain is wired for defense. Yet, the moment we react impulsively, we hand over control of our peace to someone else. Understanding before reacting is not about letting others walk over us. It's about reclaiming our emotional power. It is the art of responding with awareness rather than instinct, and that begins with a shift in perception. Every person's behavior is a story in disguise. When people lash out, criticize, or act cruelly, it often says more about their pain than our worth. Think of it like a mirror. They project what they feel inside. A person who constantly puts others down may be battling a deep sense of inadequacy. Someone who mocks your ideas might secretly fear being seen as less intelligent. Understanding this doesn't justify their actions, but it allows us to detach emotionally from their negativity. Instead of internalizing their words, we can observe them like a pattern, consistent, predictable, and often rooted in insecurity or fear. This level of understanding requires empathy, not agreement. Empathy doesn't mean accepting bad behavior, it means seeing its origin. For example, imagine a colleague who constantly criticizes your work. It's easy to assume they dislike you, but look closer, perhaps they are under immense pressure themselves, or they grew up in an environment where criticism was the only form of communication they knew. When we interpret actions through context, we become less reactive and more composed. That composure is strength in motion. Understanding before reacting also demands patience. In a world that glorifies instant replies and quick comebacks, silence becomes a superpower. Taking a moment to pause, to breathe, to assess, to think interrupts the emotional chain reaction. It gives your rational mind time to catch up with your emotional impulse. This pause is not weakness, it is discipline. It is the moment where wisdom chooses your next move, not anger. A measured response often disarms hurtful behavior because it denies it the chaos it feeds on. People who thrive on conflict lose power when you refuse to engage emotionally. There's also an element of self-awareness in understanding others. When someone hurts you, ask yourself, Why does this affect me so deeply? Sometimes the pain we feel reveals a wound of our own, an insecurity, an unmet need, or a past experience that's being triggered. By examining that, we turn every hurtful encounter into a mirror for personal growth. We learn not only about others' behavior, but also about our emotional patterns. Over time, this reflection builds emotional intelligence, making us calmer, more grounded, and less reactive to provocation. Understanding before reacting doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It means responding with purpose instead of emotion. You can still set boundaries, speak up, or walk away, but you do so from a place of clarity, not chaos. For instance, saying, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way," is far more effective than shouting in defense. The goal isn't to win the argument, it's to preserve your dignity. When your response stems from understanding rather than anger, it carries quiet authority. People may not always agree with you, but they will feel the stability in your presence. In professional environments, this mindset transforms relationships. Leaders who understand before reacting build trust faster. Instead of blaming their team for mistakes, they look for the cause: lack of communication, fear of failure, unclear expectations. That kind of leadership inspires accountability rather than resistance. Similarly, in personal life, understanding before reacting nurtures healthier connections. It teaches us to listen actively, to respond thoughtfully, and to create space for others' humanity even when it's flawed. Another important aspect is perspective. Often, what feels personal isn't personal at all. Most people are too focused on their own struggles to target us intentionally. Recognizing this helps release the grip of resentment. You begin to see hurtful interactions as passing storms, not permanent judgments. Perspective shrinks the emotional weight of the moment and expands your capacity for peace. There's wisdom in learning to step back and observe rather than absorb. The strongest people are not those who never get hurt, but those who refuse to let pain dictate their behavior. They master the ability to stay calm in chaos, not because life is easy, but because they understand human nature deeply. They know that anger is often fear in disguise, arrogance is insecurity seeking validation, and cruelty is pain crying for attention. When we begin to view others through this lens of understanding, we transform how we experience conflict. We stop trying to fix or fight hurtful people and instead focus on maintaining our emotional balance. That balance is what keeps us strong, not by hardening our hearts, but by softening our perspective. Understanding before reacting is the foundation of emotional resilience. It allows us to remain kind without being naive, firm without being cruel, and strong without losing our humanity. Boundaries are not barriers against people. They are bridges towards self-respect. Setting boundaries means recognizing where your energy ends and someone else's begins. It's about protecting your emotional space without isolating yourself from human connection. Many people misunderstand strength as total detachment, believing that to be unaffected, they must stop caring. But indifference is not strength, awareness is. Boundaries allow you to engage with others consciously, choosing when and how to participate without losing your sense of self in the process. When dealing with hurtful people, boundaries become the framework that protects your peace. Without them, every comment, criticism, or action can feel like a personal invasion. You might find yourself over-explaining, apologizing for things you didn't do, or trying to please people who will never be satisfied. A lack of boundaries leads to exhaustion because you spend your energy managing others' emotions instead of your own. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others, it's about controlling your exposure to their chaos. It's a quiet declaration that says, "I am responsible for my peace, not your behavior." Healthy boundaries begin with clarity. You must know your limits before you can communicate them. This clarity comes from self-awareness, understanding what drains you, what motivates you, and what behaviors cross the line. For example, if constant criticism leaves you emotionally depleted, you need to identify that as a limit. If gossip or manipulation triggers stress, that too is a signal. Boundaries are personal. They are built from your values and shaped by your experiences. When you know your emotional capacity, you can decide how much access others get to it. Once you identify your boundaries, communication becomes key. Many people assume others should automatically know how to treat them, but people are not mind readers. They interpret behavior through their own lens. Clear, calm communication prevents resentment from building up. For instance, instead of saying nothing when someone interrupts you repeatedly, you might say, "I'd like to finish my thought before you respond." It's direct, respectful, and effective. The goal is not confrontation but clarity. Every time you express a boundary respectfully, you reinforce your self-worth. It's also important to understand that boundaries are not punishments. They are guidelines for healthy interaction. When you distance yourself from someone who constantly disrespects you, you're not rejecting them as a human being, you're rejecting the behavior that harms your well-being. This distinction is vital. Walls are built from fear. Boundaries are built from love for your peace, your time, and your mental health. Walls isolate, boundaries educate. One shuts people out, the other teaches them how to stay in your life respectfully. Emotional boundaries are especially crucial when dealing with hurtful people. These are the invisible lines that separate your feelings from theirs. You cannot stop someone from being rude, but you can stop internalizing their words. You cannot make someone see your value, but you can refuse to shrink yourself to gain their approval. When someone tries to manipulate you emotionally through guilt, anger, or silence, a firm boundary reminds you that their emotions are their responsibility, not yours. This understanding frees you from the emotional tug-of-war that toxic interactions often create. Boundaries also apply to time and attention. Not everyone deserves unlimited access to your life. Some conversations don't need a response. Some arguments don't deserve participation. You can politely excuse yourself from negativity without explanation. Choosing silence or distance in such moments is not weakness, it's wisdom. It means you've learned to prioritize peace over proving a point. Time spent in conflict with unkind people is time stolen from your growth. Boundaries ensure you invest your energy where it matters most. There will always be people who resist your boundaries. Those who benefit from your lack of limits will call you selfish when you finally set them. This is where courage comes in. Maintaining boundaries is not always comfortable, but comfort is not the goal, alignment is. When you honor your boundaries, you send a message that your emotional health matters. Over time, this attracts people who respect your strength and repels those who exploit your kindness. It filters your relationships naturally, leaving behind those built on mutual respect. In professional settings, boundaries enhance performance and respect. They help you say no without guilt and yes without resentment. They keep work relationships professional and prevent burnout. In personal life, boundaries preserve love by reducing conflict. When expectations are clear, trust grows. A partner, friend, or family member who understands your limits will adjust because they value the relationship. If they don't, it reveals more about their priorities than yours. Boundaries are not the end of connection, they are the beginning of healthy connection. A powerful aspect of boundaries is consistency. A boundary is only as strong as your willingness to maintain it. If you set one but constantly bend it out of guilt or fear, it loses value. Consistency teaches others how to treat you. Every time you uphold a boundary, you reinforce your emotional authority. You prove to yourself that your peace is non-negotiable. This quiet confidence changes the way you walk through the world. You no longer seek validation from others because you've validated yourself. Boundaries are acts of self-respect disguised as discipline. They allow you to love without losing yourself, to care without being consumed, and to give without being drained. Setting boundaries, not walls, teaches you that you can stay open-hearted and still protect your spirit. It is not about avoiding people, it is about choosing the kind of energy you allow to influence your life. When boundaries are in place, hurtful people lose their ability to shake your peace because you no longer give them access to it. Values are the foundation of inner strength. They are the quiet principles that guide your choices when emotions try to take control. When you stay anchored in your values, you create stability in an unstable world. Hurtful people often test this stability. They provoke, manipulate, or criticize in ways that make you question your worth. But when you know who you are and what you stand for, their behavior cannot shake your identity. Values act as your compass, keeping you steady even when the emotional weather around you turns stormy. Your values define how you respond, not how others treat you. When someone insults you, your instinct might be to strike back. But if respect is one of your values, you pause, you choose composure over retaliation. That choice doesn't make you weak, it makes you consistent. Consistency builds integrity, and integrity builds power. People may not always like your boundaries or your calmness, but they will learn to respect it. Staying anchored in your values means living from principle, not reaction. You decide your behavior in advance, guided by your beliefs, rather than allowing others to dictate it in the moment. The reason many people feel emotionally unstable around hurtful individuals is because they rely on external validation. They measure their worth by others' approval or acceptance. But values shift the focus inward. Instead of asking, "Do they like me?" you begin to ask, "Did I act in alignment with who I want to be?" That shift is transformative. It removes power from others and places it back in your hands. You stop performing for acceptance and start living for authenticity. Every decision becomes a reflection of your core principles, not a reaction to someone else's behavior. Anchoring yourself in values requires clarity. You must first identify what truly matters to you. Is it honesty, kindness, discipline, respect, courage, or empathy? These are not just words, they are the standards that shape your actions. When faced with a difficult situation or a hurtful person, you can ask yourself, what does my value system require of me right now? This internal question redirects focus from emotion to ethics. It helps you act intentionally instead of impulsively. For example, if compassion is one of your values, you can choose to walk away from conflict without hatred. You can protect your peace without wishing harm. Values also create emotional grounding. When someone tries to undermine your confidence or provoke insecurity, your values remind you that your worth is not negotiable. If integrity is your anchor, you won't sacrifice your truth to gain approval. If respect is your anchor, you won't tolerate consistent disrespect. If growth is your anchor, you'll see pain as a teacher, not a trap. Anchoring yourself in values gives meaning to your experiences. It transforms hurtful encounters into opportunities to strengthen your principles. Each challenge becomes a test of alignment, a moment to live what you believe rather than just talk about it. Hurtful people often thrive on emotional reactions. They gain satisfaction when you lose control. But when you respond with value-driven calmness, you take away their influence. Your stability frustrates their chaos. For instance, if your value is patience and someone mocks or provokes you, your restraint demonstrates strength. You show that your behavior is not a reflection of theirs, but of your discipline. The more you live by your values, the less reactive you become. You no longer seek to win arguments because you've already won your peace. Living by values also prevents emotional regret. Many people replay hurtful moments, wishing they had responded differently, maybe with less anger, less defensiveness, or more clarity. When your values guide your behavior, you eliminate this regret because you know you acted with integrity. You might still feel hurt, but you'll also feel proud. You'll know that you didn't betray yourself in the process. Self-respect grows each time you respond with principle rather than impulse. Over time, this becomes emotional muscle memory. Your automatic response becomes alignment, not anger. Anchoring in values doesn't mean being passive. It means having the strength to act with intention. Sometimes that action is speaking up firmly, other times it's walking away quietly. The difference is that your decision comes from self-respect, not revenge. Values like dignity and self-control empower you to set boundaries without hostility. They teach you that silence can be powerful and calmness can be louder than any argument. When you act from values, your responses carry purpose. They influence others through example rather than dominance. In leadership, values are what earn trust. In relationships, they build safety. And in personal growth, they create resilience. For example, if accountability is one of your core values, you won't allow blame or bitterness to dictate your mindset. You'll own your part, learn your lesson, and move forward stronger. Values provide emotional structure, a mental framework that keeps you upright when others try to knock you down. Without them, every interaction becomes unpredictable. With them, every challenge becomes manageable. The true power of staying anchored in values is that it frees you from emotional dependency. You stop chasing approval because your validation comes from within. You stop fearing rejection because your sense of worth is self-defined. People may misunderstand your calmness as indifference or your boundaries as arrogance, but that no longer matters. Your focus shifts from being understood to being aligned. You start to realize that peace is not found in controlling others. It's found in controlling your responses according to what you believe in. To stay anchored in your values is to live with direction in every situation. It's to stand tall when others try to pull you down. It's to stay kind when cruelty surrounds you, to stay honest when lies seem easier, and to stay respectful when disrespect tempts you to fall. Values become your inner compass, steady, unshakable, and deeply personal. They remind you that strength is not about overpowering others, it's about mastering yourself, and when you live anchored in that truth, no hurtful person can dictate the quality of your peace. When someone hurts you, your heart naturally seeks justice. The mind replays the incident again and again, analyzing what was said, what you could have done differently, and how unfair it all feels. Holding a grudge seems like protection, a shield against future pain. But in reality, it is a weight that holds you back from emotional freedom. Choosing growth over grudge is not about denying your pain, it's about transforming it. It means deciding that every painful experience will serve as a lesson, not a prison. It's a choice to evolve instead of staying stuck in resentment. Growth begins with perspective. Painful experiences with hurtful people can become either your reason for bitterness or your foundation for wisdom. The difference lies in what you focus on. If you fixate on the injustice, you nurture anger, but if you look for the lesson, you nurture strength. Every hurtful interaction teaches something about boundaries, about self, worth, about patience, or about human behavior. When you shift your focus from what happened to you to what you can learn from it, pain begins to lose its power. This mindset doesn't erase the hurt, but it gives it meaning. Holding on to grudges traps you in emotional repetition. You keep reliving the same story, carrying the same energy that once broke you. It's like rereading the same painful chapter, hoping the ending will somehow change. Growth, however, allows you to close that chapter and write a new one. It invites you to reclaim your emotional energy and use it for healing. The more you grow, the less control the past has over you. Forgiveness not as approval, but as release becomes part of that process. Forgiveness doesn't say, what you did is okay. It says, I'm done carrying this pain that belongs to you. Choosing growth over grudge requires emotional maturity. It means taking responsibility for your healing, even if you weren't responsible for the hurt. This can feel unfair at first. You might wonder why you should do the work when someone else caused the damage. But emotional maturity recognizes that clinging to resentment only prolongs the wound. Healing doesn't mean letting the other person off the hook. It means freeing yourself from the hook that keeps you tethered to them. It's realizing that growth is a personal act of self-respect, not a gift to the one who wronged you. One of the biggest barriers to growth is ego. The ego thrives on being right, on keeping score, on replaying old battles. It whispers that holding a grudge is power, that letting go means weakness. But growth comes when you realize that true strength lies in release, not revenge. Letting go doesn't erase the memory, it redefines its meaning. You stop being the victim of your story and become the author of it. You decide that what hurt you will now shape your resilience, your empathy, and your clarity. The same experience that once broke you becomes the soil from which your strength grows. To choose growth, reflection is essential. Ask yourself, what is this experience trying to teach me? Maybe it's teaching you to stop overgiving. Maybe it's teaching you to trust actions more than words. Maybe it's showing you the kind of person you never want to become. Pain is a powerful teacher, but only when you're willing to listen. Reflection turns suffering into understanding. It helps you see patterns not just in others' behavior, but in your own reactions. Once you see those patterns clearly, you gain the power to change them. Growth also involves gratitude, even for the uncomfortable moments. Gratitude doesn't mean you're happy about what happened. It means you recognize its contribution to your evolution. Every betrayal, disappointment, or insult strengthens something within you, perhaps your discernment, patience, or resilience. Over time, you begin to thank life for the lessons rather than cursing it for the pain. Gratitude shifts your focus from loss to learning. It helps you see that while hurtful people may have disrupted your peace temporarily, they also pushed you toward a stronger version of yourself. Choosing growth over grudge doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering differently. You can acknowledge what happened without allowing it to define you. You can recall the pain without reliving it. You can use the memory as a reminder of what you've overcome. Growth changes your relationship with the past. It turns it from a wound into wisdom. When you heal, you no longer need to prove anything to the person who hurt you. Your peace becomes the evidence of your evolution. This choice also transforms how you interact with others in the future. Instead of approaching relationships with suspicion or fear, you approach them with awareness. Growth teaches discernment, the ability to see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. It helps you set boundaries early, communicate clearly, and recognize red flags without resentment. When you've grown from your pain, you stop projecting it onto others. You respond from healing, not from history. Emotionally, growth feels lighter. Grudge feels heavy. It consumes your thoughts, distorts your energy, and colors your view of the world. Growth liberates that energy. It gives you space to dream again, to trust again, to create again. You no longer need to prove your worth to anyone who doubted it. The very act of healing becomes your quiet victory. You learn to say, yes, it hurt, but it also helped me become who I am now. That sentence alone carries more power than any revenge ever could. Ultimately, choosing growth over grudge is a continuous practice. Every new hurt presents the same two paths to harden or to expand. Each time you choose to expand, you reinforce emotional intelligence and resilience. You become stronger not because life spared you pain, but because you refuse to let pain make you bitter. Growth is not the absence of hurt, it's the decision to rise with understanding. Hurtful people lose their influence over you the moment you turn their actions into your evolution. By choosing growth, you reclaim ownership of your story, and that is the greatest form of strength there is.